I think even us as an organization, we've had experiences.
In fact, that's why I asked that question. Because there was a time that our mission statement was just looking like, and like this. Like, the grammar was too much, and I was like, it wasn't really making a lot of sense. Not that it wasn't making sense, but to rephrase it, sometimes I have to use the exact words. Unlike what we have now, that is much more simple and straight to the point. Of what
Yes.
So that's why.
And I think that should be a rule of thumb. Hello and welcome to Impact Bureau, a unique podcast brought to you by Mayan Organization. Impact Bureau is designed for NGO leaders, executives, founders, members, and trustees. Think of us on Impact Bureau as your unincorporated trustees who give you real advice that you wish your real board coulda, woulda, shoulda. Hello!
Hi everyone!
Welcome and thank you for joining another episode of our very exciting podcast, Impact Bureau, which is dedicated to NGO executives, founders, and leaders. We're so thrilled that you've been enjoying this discussion so much that you're tuning in for this edition again. And if you recall from the last episode, this today is a continuation of our exciting discussion around strategic planning. My name is Edem, and I have with me the delectable Mo. Yes, and together we're going to be, anchoring this conversation. So stick with us and enjoy the ride.
Okay, so the last time on this channel, we talked about strategic planning and we touched on a couple of things. So we talked about, first of all, understanding what you want to do, knowing what you want to do, going about your mission, vision statement, that you need to include the About Us section in your strategic plan and all of that. But then we promised you that we're going to come back this week to continue on that conversation because we shared a whole lot of nuggets the last time. And this time around, we want to take a deeper dive into conversations around putting together your strategy document. And we came ready today, as you can see. PD has a new hair on.
I hope you like my hair, dear.
Same here. So we came really prepared. So first of all, Edie, we talked about inviting, the right kind of people to deliberate with you on what should you be including in your strategic plan. So can we begin to even talk about how do I determine the right set of people? When you say the right set of people, what does that mean basically?
Mo, that's a great question. So I remember a friend of mine when I was in grad school, and we finished grad school, and he wanted to set up his NGO in Afghanistan. Well, this was around COVID, and he invited me to be part of his strategic planning team. He had gone back home to Afghanistan before the collapse of Afghanistan. Okay. And I arrived at the meeting, and it was virtual. We're doing the meetings virtually. Okay. And there were about 7 of us from, most of us were his classmates back in school, grad school. But I looked at the profile of everybody in that team and something struck me. So he was very intentional. Okay. He had identified some of us who already had impact organizations and had been running these organizations for years or for a while. He identified people who had been consulting around human rights and other, aspects of the sustainable development goals. Okay. By virtue of consulting around development issues, they come in contact with NGOs, multilateral organizations, donor organizations, thank you, and government entities as well. He identified even entrepreneurs. Wow. Yes, people who have built something. So the 2 entrepreneurs, for instance, were I'll call them social entrepreneurs because even though they were using a business model, one was in nutrition, so she was addressing nutritional gaps, through a product. Okay. The other one was providing, I don't know what it was, but it's some kind of business around solar, energy for, it was targeted at nations, and she was helping to do some computation of the carbon footprint for companies and whatnot. So she had a whole consultancy around that, right? But it was green energy related. So you could call her therefore a social entrepreneur because even though it was a business model, she was addressing a societal problem. So there were those ones. He also invited, there was a member of the team who had or was still working for, USAID. So basically, huge donor entities that have rollout of funding for, subnational governments, national governments, and huge NGOs slash coalitions. So they were also included in the team. And I just realized how the different perspectives all of us brought to the table enriched his strategic planning process. He also had two members of citizens from Afghanistan who were able to guide the needs assessment, exercise to help us really tailor and identify what gaps we needed to build specific programs around.
Okay, so now, you gave a very nice example. I like the fact that you're even speaking outside the context of Nigeria. So it means that wherever you find yourself in the world, and you want to run impact projects, you want to start an NGO, it's very important that you speak with people who have gone ahead of you, who have built something. So now, you also talked about the About Us section, or the introduction section of the strategy document. We talked about the mission statement, vision statement, context analysis. How do I go about that in layman terms?
So one of the things I like to tell people, by the way, let me mention, and it's worth mentioning, that strategic planning process lasted as long as 6 months. We're meeting every Saturday, I kid you not, for 6 months. I didn't even do that for my own organization when I was starting my organization. But I learned a key lesson. It's like a house, you know how they say it. If you don't have a blueprint, you have to have a very strong blueprint, and that's really your plan. It's the same thing for organizations, for companies and whatnot. So that exercise, he was able to pull together people who brought in those very critical perspectives to, tailor and guide the strategic plan. Now, to your specific question about how am I going to go about this issue of even the introduction, the vision, the mission, right? So most times there's a problem in the world that you want to address. That therefore means that I think the easiest place to start from is your vision. Because you don't want that problem to exist anymore, right? So one of the things, and a vision statement is just how the world looks if that problem is solved. So it's the easiest thing to couch, in my opinion, at least from my personal experience, because you're simply saying, my vision of the world, or my vision is a world where, or my vision is a community where, or my vision is young people who have, or my vision is women who are empowered to do, or my vision is, governments that are transparent, responsive, or electoral processes that are credible. That's the vision, and it comes from the problem you don't want to exist anymore, right? Then let's move to your mission statement. Having seen the vision of the world, what are you going to be doing to realize that vision of the world? So in one person might say, I'm going to be organizing trainings for public sector officials so that they can always, conduct their activities transparently and in line with good or best practices. I'm going to be organizing, maybe I'm going to be delivering media sensitization campaigns, or I'm going to be organizing campaigns in local communities so that families will be educated on the importance of girl-child education. Or I'm going to be delivering free healthcare screenings around cervical cancer. Or I'm going to be, distributing fertilizers to farmers in the most hard to reach communities so that they can overcome or experience higher crop yield. So you're going to be doing what? Your mission is simply that thing I'm going to be doing to realize that vision. Now, it doesn't mean in the mission statement you tell me your specific programs. You don't need to go into the detail of, I'm going to organize a workshop for girls every. What are you going to be doing? I'm going to be sensitizing. I'm going to be training. I'm going to be coordinating. Or I'm going to be researching. I'm going to be drafting toolkits, and I'm going to be sharing toolkits. So these are examples of what are you going to be doing to advance that world or to promote the existence of that world.
I think at some other time, my instinct is to do like a physical training on this for people who might be interested, because I've once been to a training where we're discussing mission, vision, and people still didn't get it. As simple as it seems. It might be difficult to get at once. And is there ever a situation where maybe you keep trying to rephrase your mission? Can it ever happen that you don't get your mission right?
Definitely, and I think even us as an organization, we've had experiences.
In fact, that's why I asked that question. Because there was a time that our mission statement was just looking like, and like, the grammar was too much, and I was like, it wasn't really making a lot of sense. Not that it wasn't making sense, but to rephrase it, sometimes I have to use the exact words. Unlike what we have now, that is much more simple and straight to the point. Of what
Yes.
So that's why.
And I think that should be a rule of thumb. I think that the simpler you communicate with the world, the better you are. Generally, your position is just better, both for guiding your internal team members and even for communicating to the members of the public who you want to partner with you, or
it's good for your team members to embody the mission. It won't be nice if they go to a function and they want to speak about your organization and they don't even remember what to say about your mission statement.
And I think also people shouldn't get trapped in, grandiose language. I think that, at the kernel of what you want to do is, remember, coming from that vision of the world, you want to therefore, maybe for you want to always be dealing with capacity building. You want to be promoting issues of capacity. You just want to be promoting capacity building for teachers around social emotional learning. Or you want to be, supporting smallholder farmers through, you can have 3 things you want to always be doing. Some people might only want to do one thing, capacity building. Some people might want to do those three things, as they want to just be promoting that. So that time
the most concise
way. I think the challenge, what happens is that people want to, there's a level to which people want to be specific or to give enough information in the mission statement, and at the same time you still want to be at a general place. So sometimes you want to say something like, I'm going to be, you don't want to say I'm going to be promoting, because it's almost like that word is a buzzword. We will be promoting this and that. Promoting how? So people want to give a bit more detail in the vision statement, and then they get into the trap of, it's a pitfall of them being overly, specific or using high lofty language. So I think you need to find that harmony between not being too vague and not being too specific.
And I think I'm expressing
and just being very sure, even at that point, that for you do feel that the reason for this gap is that people don't have enough capacity. That is, they are not skilled enough. So if I address issues of, green practices for smallholder farmers, they will have better agricultural practices that make them they will not fall to the droughts and all the changing climate conditions. They will be more climate resilient, right? Or they'll be able to mitigate. So for you just feel that training farmers in climate resilience practices or climate mitigation strategies is the way to go. Some other person, let's say maybe it is issues on nutrition. You feel that you want to be educating mothers, or maybe pregnant mothers, or maybe women who have just delivered, around what do you call it, balanced, I don't want to say balanced, nutritional meals and combinations for a healthy baby in the womb and a healthy, newly delivered baby. So things like that. So one person might decide, I'm just going to be disseminating information on nutritional, nutrition. Another person might decide, I'm going to be training on the practices. Another person might decide, I'm going to be developing toolkits. That if I give toolkits to maybe organizations, they will be able to do training of trainers. So those are examples.
Okay, so as a yes or no question, can you fine-tune your mission statement?
Definitely.
At some point?
Yes. You can always iterate. In fact, so don't feel that because I wrote a strategy plan
this year,
and I've shared it, I cannot come and improve it next year. You understand? The only thing is that as a management tool, there's a priority your organization is working on for this period, because all your capacity is tailored around that priority. Maybe the focus for the first 3 years is organizational structuring. You won't be changing your focus every time, but in terms of the language you used to communicate that, you can go and improve the language. But you can't go and be changing your objectives. You can't go and change your mission statements and just go back and forth like that. You're not sure of who you are. That's what it means.
Okay. So can we quickly also brush through on the context analysis, since it's part of the introduction?
Yes. You should do, for you to even be able to map out what kinds of programs you're going to embark upon as interventions. It has to come from a place of you properly analyzing the context you're dealing with. You have to be fully seized of the problem, that is fully aware of the problem, the root causes behind the problem, the manifestations of that problem. Going back to the example I gave in the beginning of my friend who invited me to be on his board, who had an organization in Afghanistan. As part of our strategy planning, process, exercise, we had several meetings. I can't forget. I think we had about 3 of those meetings where we brought in a women's leader in Afghanistan, a youth leader in Afghanistan, and then there was a community leader. And they came to give us context. They came to
what was happening
on the ground. He had already, prior to this time, shared with us resources, a rich, plethora of well-researched, credible information about the situation in Afghanistan. His organization was focused on peace and democracy, reinstatement of peace at community level, in Afghanistan. So we were already reading up on all the context to get a, proper appreciation of what the researchers or all the evidence collected around the issues were. Then he brought in these people, a youth leader, a women's leader, and a community leader to give us perspectives. Thank you. They have the understanding of the lived realities in Afghanistan. So they would walk us through, they would give, accounts, they would share challenges that women experience, young women, mothers. A gamut of perspectives they will provide it. The youth leader would be able to tell us issues around employment, issues around skills, issues around income, issues around healthcare, issues around sexual and reproductive health for young people, mental health for young people in Afghanistan, and how all of these were affected by, activities of maybe the bombings that they were recording a lot, the Taliban, things like that. So these perspectives were able to guide us also in then saying, in the ranking of problems, based on our understanding of our current capacity and our strengths, which of these should we reasonably aim to target or to build our intervention around? Also, you would ask those people, what do you want to see most urgently as a change or a transformation in the country or the context you're living in? So based on all that feedback, you yourself would then be saying, the responses I'm receiving is telling me, so that you're not a top-down planner, but bottom up, so that when you're even devising your program, it's coming from a place of the people on the ground are saying that this is their pain, this is their actual pain point. So you should tailor your around that. Yes.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a lot. Like my head is literally steaming right now with information, but it's not information overload, really. Okay, so now let's move to the part where we're talking about the theory of change and the organogram.
Okay.
How do I go about it?
Okay. I think that, again, remember we're working backwards. We're starting from the vision of the world. From there we said, okay, what will I be doing to achieve this vision of the world? Then you came to a point of work. Exactly. You came to, you looked at the context analysis, that problem that even gave birth to your vision, right? Then you're now saying, okay,
what is the logic?
What is the logic behind this thing? You said in your mission statement, you said you're going to be doing this activity or this set or series of things to change the world as you know it, to the world as you desire it to be. So what's the thinking behind that? Because some donors will want to see a theory of change. They will say, what's the theory that your entire activities, intervention are built around, So you then would be able to frame it and say, our thinking or the logic behind our approach is that if people know better, they do better. So if people have more information around these kinds of activities, then people's behaviors would naturally, reflect higher knowledge, or people's behaviors would be transformed or would be changed over time because of access to better information. And this, maybe you could talk about things like sexual and reproductive health. Or if we eradicate stigmas around mental health and we do a lot of sensitization to, do away with these stigmas, more and more young people would report any incidents of mental health breakdown or disorder so that they can access treatment. So we'll be able to do early detection treatment and just help young people, reintegrate back into normal lives and, activities. Or, so again, it's just communicating it logically. The reason why I'm going to be doing this, and then you can support it with evidence. In fact, no, you can. Ideally, you should support it with evidence, so that it's not just you hypothesizing in your chair, but you're saying that maybe the literature or studies have shown, or similar what do you call it? Challenges, gaps in countries with context similar to ours were addressed in this manner and yielded the following outcomes, giving us the confidence that if we do 1, 2, 3 years and localize this same intervention in our context, we will also generate these sets of outcomes. So this is what generally you did go to a military school. Which kind of command? So yeah, these are the kinds of things that should govern your theory or your logic model. And then to the organogram.
Yeah. I have to have all my team members complete before drafting an organogram.
No, so even at the level of organogram, we're not necessarily saying my department is going to have 10 people or it's going to have 5 people. It's more thematically. So the themes that you want to see reflected. I'm going to need administrative staff. I'm going to need, for the nature of work I'm doing, I'm going to need maybe a legal team. Let's say, for instance, I gave the example last week of somebody who is providing legal aid to inmates. You need to have lawyers now who will go and do the trial, for them. So your organogram would reflect maybe some administrative apparatus, some technical apparatus, then of course your governing structure, because the donor working with you, the government entity wants to see that you're subject to corporate governance principles as well. So what's the reporting, what's the hierarchy, and who reports to who, who does management report to, and under management, how are the teams then organized? So your system for the delivery of this intervention is basically reflected in your organogram. You don't need to be saying there will be 10 people in this department, there will be only 2. No, but we're just saying thematically this organization is always going to have these kinds of people.
I would like to just go back to what we discussed last week when you were sharing with us the components of designing a strategy plan. So when you were talking about the body of the plan, you talked about our approaches, like how do you really want to go about your interventions? What methods do you want to use? You talked about SWOT analysis, where you're looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Your goals, what will be your strategic focus for how long, and then per time if you want to break it down and all of that. Now, to my direct question, how do I go about this?
All these elements, right? I think that, looking at the body of the document, which begins, maybe you've already listed the programs or the interventions you're proposing that your organization will be running, the approaches you're going to be embarking upon for these. So some people might say, I am always going to do workshops. I'm always going to do distribution of relief materials. I'm always going to have a refuge. I'm always going to convene summits. So depending on your approach, you now begin to say, based on that, we'll have this set of programs. There will be an employability workshop. There will always be an annual summit for career, and just say, or an annual climate summit that brings in all the stakeholders, So if these are the approaches, and then from these approaches you design specific programs, you now need to look at yourself to analyze the strengths, your current position, because we talked about it. Your strategy plan is your management tool. It gives you direction. It helps you to properly reflect on the changing world and dynamics, the context that you are in. It helps you to fully analyze, your position in terms of what resources you currently have and how you can deploy them effectively and efficiently. So based on that, you want to conduct a SWOT. You want to look at your current strength, or what you call capacity, right, to even achieve these things you proposed in the document. So by virtue of that, you would need to, and that's where the people with you will be helpful. They'll be able to point out, okay, well, in the first hand, at least we have a group of maybe the board. Maybe your first strength might be your board members who bring in unique sets of skills. Another strength you might have might be existing relationships that all of these board members possess, which you can then leverage. Relationships to government agencies, relationships to community associations, whatever. So these might be strengths you want to, because remember, we're talking about assuming you are a new organization. You are starting afresh. So you don't have a pool of money saved up in the bank. You don't have, maybe you don't even have an office space. Let's go as real as that, right? So, but what do you have in your hands? You need to identify that. Then you now move from the place of that to, okay, my weaknesses. And the only way you can really know strengths and weaknesses is when you know what you're proposing to do. That's why you're coming from the vision, the mission, the proposed approaches, the proposed programs. It's vis-a-vis that you can now say, okay, what's my strength in relation to this thing I seek to do? Do you understand? So you need to do that analysis. When you've now done that analysis, you move to the goal statement, because what do you have in your hands? You need to identify that. Then you now move from the place of that to, okay, my weaknesses. And the only way you can really know strengths and weaknesses is when you know what you're proposing to do. That's why you're coming from the vision, the mission, the proposed approaches, the proposed programs. It's vis-a-vis that you can now say, okay, what's my strength in relation to this thing I seek to do? Do you understand? So you need to do that analysis. When you've now done that analysis, you move to the goal statement. Because if you say this is what you want to do in the world, to achieve, to be doing this mission, to realize this vision, you now need to, you've done your strengths and weaknesses, you've also examined opportunities and threats. And by opportunities and threats, you need to do a lot of desk research, check the internet, read up papers, read up reports. When I was starting my, I swallowed and consumed a lot of UNESCO reports on education. Yes. That was what guided me on the problem. And then I went into communities. I was making a lot of inquiries. So do a lot of desk research, read the newspapers, because you want to know government policies. Those policies might represent opportunities for you. There might be, I mean, I think in the last episode I talked about Bill Gates, or even threats. The government might be saying it no longer wants activities in this area. Another policy might say we now have, approved the FOI bill, so you can now use that to, access for people who are in democracy and all those kinds of things. So it's good to do those things. And then finally, you want to, write a goal statement or identify your priorities vis-a-vis those strengths and weaknesses. So for that, you can't have everything immediately. Organizations grow organically, just like children. You know, the 10-year-old was once a 1-year-old.
So you don't have to have it all
figured out. Not that you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to achieve it all at once. The purpose of the plan is to knock out, so in terms of figuring it out, when we say figuring it out, you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan. You have to have your strategy document.
You don't have all the resources.
Yes. You don't even have to hire. So if your statement is saying, I have to have, the ideal is to have 4 departments.
And you don't have money to hire anybody.
You must then focus on which of these is the most critical that I must have. So you might not have money to hire monitoring and evaluation experts now at the beginning. Maybe at that point in time, you're going to hire programs, and you're going to make sure that programs is delivering elements of MEL. But the organigram should still state what is the picture should look like. For this thing to be realized, this is what should exist. So that's the thing about a strategy plan. It's a plan. It's not that the house is already built. It's a plan. So you will now phase out the achievement of this plan. For the phase 1 of this plan, which one is my priority now? For phase 2, which one is my priority? For phase 3, which one is my priority? All of these are leading to the completion of the house, completion of the vision statement / strategy document.
Wow. Okay, guys, so there you have it. It's been another insightful session, sharing with you some of the things you need to keep in mind when you are drafting your strategy document, especially for NGO owners that might be starting out. But then this information is not just for those starting out. There might be NGO owners already who maybe by the time they started out, they did not have all of this information. It's high time you went back to your existing documents. If you don't have a strategy document already, I mean, you should draft one. And if you have one, but you feel it's not as, comprehensive as it should be, you can take some of the nuggets that we've shared in this podcast episode so far, and then try to do something about it. Rebrand, re-strategize, start over again. It's never too late. Maybe, do you have something to share?
We also support, yes. I would be very excited to support you in the strategic planning process. If you want to invite us to be part of that process, to join your team meetings, we're available to do so. You can also reach out to us if you want guidance along resources to use to help you embark on your drafting your strategic plan. So Mayan has over the years built a set of tools that we make available to people who show interest. And so this is an opportunity for you to reach out to us also. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the podcast. I'm glad we found it useful because if you stay to the end, it must have been useful. See you on the next episode. Take care.
Bye.